Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Catherine Mattice, founder and CEO of Civility Partners. We're a consulting firm that focuses on building positive, thriving work environments. We do that through workforce surveys. We work with leaders to figure out what to do with those data results and make plans for change. We also do lots of really big training programs where we're offering series of topics along the way. As well as I coach executives who have been accused of bullying or harassing or causing drama. So today I have Julian Reeve with me, who has a very interesting backstory. So I'm super excited. Thank you for being here with me, Julian.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Julian was the music director for Hamilton so wow. And now we're here talking about burnout. So let's just dive in. What happened?
Yeah, it's a significant leap, isn't it? How do you get from Broadway's biggest show to Burnout? Well, prior to Hamilton, I was working as a music director for many years, about 25, 30 years, toured all around the world with Broadway shows, very lucky. 3 months into my job on Hamilton, I had a heart attack, stress-induced at the age of 43. And I suppose you could say that was, obviously it was a very big life event that changed my life significantly, but that was also the beginning of my journey to what I call perfect equilibrium, and started kind of my research into burnout, why high achievers burn out, what they need to avoid burnout, what organizations need to do to avoid burnout, etc. So that's how we got here. And I suppose when I came out of performing, I stopped performing in 2019. I joined Hamilton in 2016 as part of the Broadway production, and then I took out the first national tour at the front of 17. Quit performing altogether in 2019. I kind of used the pandemic, the time, to kind of make the transition. And yeah, burnout is it's something very close to my heart, literally, because of what happened. I appreciate that heart attacks aren't burnout. That's not what burnout is. But, ostensibly, I'm just hugely passionate about helping high achievers and the organizations that employ them achieve success in healthier ways, because that's what we all deserve.
Yeah. We're going to have you back to just talk about your career
Right.
different conversation. I'm sure lots of people would be curious to know about how you got into Broadway and all that. But anyways,
Right.
So I appreciate that. And certainly burnout is something, just from my perspective and tying it to what we do, burnout or being overly stressed certainly causes us to be shorter with each other. We have less energy to be kind. We get focused on, I got to do this. I'm exhausted. Don't ask me that question. And so certainly burnout translates into our behavior as well. And if we're taking care of our employees in a variety of ways, addressing their stress is one. Do you feel like, I think a lot of organizations, it's like, we know we got to help manage stress and burnout. It's a big topic. Let's get everybody a yoga studio, whatever, and we'll get them an EAP. And so they're really addressing burnout as like, you as an individual, I'm going to help you, without necessarily taking a look at what the organization is doing to cause the burnout.
Yes, absolutely. We see this all the time. And, I think there's been a kind of traditional fix, if you like, which is let's focus solely on the employee. And, those that are doing that, great to a point. And the reason why we understand to a point is basically the reason why I strongly advocate that burnout has to be an organizational and an individual responsibility, because when those two responsibilities come together, that's really where we climb out of burnout and find what I call perfect equilibrium. But I think a lot of organizations are, the conversations that I have with C-suite are interesting because, either they feel as though they're doing something, so therefore that something is enough, or they don't know what to do specific to stress and burnout. or they are very fearful of what any shakeup can do to their organization. Obviously, the bigger the organization, the bigger the fear, arguably, because if you've got 25,000 employees instead of 250 employees, then systematically and structurally and all of the stuff, it's going to take a minute. But that's really why I kind of focus on offering a program that really gets to the heart of burnout quickly and effectively, because it's not as difficult or as kind of uprooting, as you like, if you like, as a lot of people fear it could be.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So,
Yeah.
what is perfect equilibrium? Let's start there, if
Yeah.
I can say it.
Well, perfect equilibrium for me is when organizations and individuals find three things or purposely focus on three things. Number one, mindset.
Mhm,
There has to be a specific shift from an organizational standpoint that says, okay, I value my employees.
mhm,
I want to invest in them because they're exceptionally gifted at what they do and we care about them. So, therefore, there has to be a flag in the sand moment that is a commitment to burnout management.
mhm,
From an individual perspective, that mindset shift is how can I look at stress differently?
mhm,
So, stress is the principal driver to burnout.
mhm,
Now, I don't necessarily advocate that we should be looking at stress as bad and therefore we should get rid of it, mainly because we're never going to get rid of stress because it's always going to exist. It's going to be omnipresent. So we
mhm,
need to shift our mindset in terms of how we look at it so that we can look at the stress that we feel as being enhancing,
mhm,
as being a trigger for us to help us move forward, as
mhm,
opposed to be debilitating.
mhm,
The second element of perfect equilibrium is systems. From an organizational standpoint, we need educational systems, we need communication systems, we need management systems, everything that we can to structure the organization well
mhm,
from a burnout perspective.
mhm,
How we do that is we focus on the 6 main areas of burnout and we build outwards. And one simple system is the one that might address reward and recognition, for example. So reward and recognition is a huge element of burnout.
mhm,
You can build an email system today in 4 minutes that automatically sends employees on a Friday the email that says, "Hi team, thank you for this week. Really excited about what we're doing. Think you guys are awesome. Have a wonderfully relaxing weekend. You've earned it. You deserve it. Looking forward to rocking the shit with you on Monday." Right?
Love it.
And it's something that simple can be the lifeline for employees to hold on to. So
Mhm,
that's just one example of a system that we can implement. From an individual standpoint, systematically, we have to get into the weeds of who we are as individuals that contributes to our burnout.
mhm,
So the organization have a responsibility, but so do we.
mhm,
What do I mean? The root cause of my heart attack was perfectionism.
mhm,
And I had to get to the understanding that that was the case. Then I
mhm.
had to do the work and fundamentally understand that the perfectionism that I brought to the table was good in one way, i.e., you are of sufficient standard to be conducting Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
But in a negative way, in a maladaptive way, it was really affecting my self-esteem, which was fueling all sorts of behaviors and patterns that didn't
Mhm,
serve me, that didn't serve my health or my work. So
mhm,
doing that work and creating systems as individuals is really important. And lastly, for both the organization and the individual, it's applying strategy to put all of that into the melting pot and to go, okay, for the next day, we're going to do this. For the next 6 months, we're going to do this. And it's
mhm.
building that kind of pathway out of burnout.
I love that. I love how you went from directing or the music director of Hamilton to being an organizational development consultant.
Right.
I'm assuming there's some transferable skills there. That's just so awesome because I'm thinking, You're describing things I talk about that took me,
Yes.
I've been doing it for 20 years. So
Right.
wow, it's just awesome. I love, and I talk about that too. I joke sometimes HR has to be an HR ninja, where even if the CEO doesn't approve a bunch of dollars for some burnout program or to hire you, that the HR even can play a role in some of this by,
Yes.
hey, CEO, could we at least do this? Or, and so really trying to find ways sometimes to make things happen, even though you don't have a budget. So
Yeah.
hopefully we do have budget. So what's your first step when you work with a client? So, or when clients call you or reach potential clients, are they reaching out because they can sense that people are burned out and they want to fix it? Is it just, what's the driver? I'm curious.
It's a combination of two things really, mainly. I suppose it depends on who's calling. So
Hmm.
if C-suite are calling, then they are often calling because there's a problem with engagement, or more likely there's a problem with employee retention.
Hmm.
And somewhere along the line in the ether of Google or Chat GPT or wherever they're finding their information, they're understanding that actually stress and burnout are main contributors, which actually is fully backed up by HR managers. I think the
Yeah.
statistic now is 95% of all HR managers consider burnout to be kind of a principal driver to that employee retention problem.
Hmm.
So that's it from a C-suite perspective. HR sometimes connect with me because they are having an individual issue,
Mm.
and what I can do with those guys is kind of help them move forward. There's a specific 3-month program that I have that kind of gets to the root of their own burnout, but also gives them the skills to transfer a lot of that learning and education into their organization.
Hmm.
Because I'm hugely passionate about helping the people, helping the middle of the sandwich, as I call it, right? Because all too often I think there can be a tendency for consultancies to push services, but there has to be a baseline realization, especially in the current market, where
Yeah.
organizations aren't always able to offer those types of programs. But the people in the middle, the HR professionals and the middle managers, are the people that desperately need the help. The
Yeah.
irony for me is that the people charged with managing burnout in an organization are often the most burned out department. So how do we help them so that they can keep their head above water, so
Uh-huh.
that they can help others? And you asked me earlier, what's the first step? And I think with HR, the first step is acceptance.
Yeah.
And it's accepting that nothing is going to change unless they start to put themselves first.
Right.
I've lost count of the number of conversations I've had where, I love working with HR because they're beautiful people. They care, they're empathetic, they want their organization to thrive, they want the people within it to do the same and be healthy along the way.
Right.
But very often, those HR professionals can be looking elsewhere at the detriment of their own health.
Right.
And so the acceptance and the permission, give yourself permission to put yourself first. It's the whole, I'm on an airplane, and if you
Yeah, but I
experience
was thinking that. Put
and
your
it
mask on
yes,
first.
exactly. You can't help anyone else unless you help yourself first. And so that really is the first step.
Yeah, that's good parenting advice too. You can't be a good parent if you're stressed out. We have a question, and it's along the same lines of what I was thinking too. Asks, is there any analytical tools that we can adopt to help predict burnout? And so my version of that too is how do we look at the root cause? If people say they're burnout, how do you understand what parts of the organizational systems are actually causing that burnout or facilitating it? So
Yeah.
I guess they're two different questions, actually. So let's
Yeah.
answer Cheetles first.
Remind me which that bit was, because I've gone
Cheetos,
off on a
is there any analytical tools we can adopt who can predict this and help us in this scenario?
Yeah, so at Perfect Equilibrium, we use something called the Maslash Burnout Inventory.
Okay.
So Christina Maslash is like burnout pioneer. She kind of really sort of got to the root of burnout first. And she created a wonderful tool accompanied by the AWS that, we bring into an organization to specifically find out where the burnout is. So it
Mhm.
tests all 6 areas of burnout. So the 6 areas of burnout are work overload, lack of control, insufficient reward, feelings of unfairness, breakdown of community, and conflict of values.
Mhm.
And so, what the MBI does is it gets to the root cause of those 6 areas. And it also helps you understand from a per departmental perspective how people are feeling with overwhelm, exhaustion, cynicism, detachment, ineffectiveness, lack of accomplishment, all of which are huge
Right.
components of burnout.
Right.
And that data then obviously allows you, because it's departmental specific or department specific, that allows you to to build out with specific solutions to that department, which is great.
Awesome. And so you're working with each department to figure out what to do with the data and
Yeah,
make
so
plans?
I actually don't do so that I kind of do things from my whole perspective with Perfect Equilibrium is to empower the organization to be able to control their situation moving forward long after I'm out the door.
Mhm.
So what I do is I work with the middle managers who then work with the departments. So all of it's supervised, but ostensibly what I do is I create the arc which says,
Mhm.
okay, here's the data, and I combine it with other data with, that the HR professional will give me, culture surveys, all the stuff. And
Yep.
it's here is my solution. Here is what I suggest we
Mhm.
implement within this organization.
Mhm.
And then specific departments or leadership or middle management are given specific roles. Off they go. I supervise everything together with C suite. And 90 days later, we're in a much, much stronger position.
That's awesome. So the organization feels the change.
Yes. And
And
quickly too, which is important.
yeah, someone says that I love that it's per department so that, yeah, every department's going to have its own issues. That's for sure. How do you, so I know there's lots of CEOs out there who, while they say they care about employees, and I know they do, they don't necessarily understand how important solving burnout is or addressing a toxic culture or, and where, they're missing that connection. So what tips do you have for HR or anybody to talk to their CEO about burnout and it's important to put some resources towards addressing it?
Yeah. And a couple of things here. So, my advice to anyone in a kind of middle management situation, HR particularly, in terms of how to kind of get the fish on the hook, is treat the fish as a complete C-suite.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is my advice is always find the member of C-suite that has a burnout journey themselves. There's
Mm.
always one, pretty much,
Mhm.
right?
Or 2 or 3, I would assume.
There you go, right? But very often, CEOs won't act unless there is sufficient support from numerous foundations. And
Mhm.
one of the foundations is HR, tick,
Mhm.
but you need other people on board. There needs to be a kind of swell, if you like, of excitement to get this done. Once you've identified who those people are, have the conversations about the personal journey that they've been through and kind of reconnect them with the pain that they went through
Mhm.
and connect them with what they are now able to achieve because of the journey that they've been through.
Mhm.
And that's one important element. Another important element that is particularly valuable for CEOs is just get to the bottom line. Figure out what your employee retention numbers are
Mhm.
and find the data, which is easily doable, about the correlation of stress to burnout
Mhm.
to employee retention.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what you're saying, and this is actually an objection that I face on my sales calls,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I have an ROI calculator as part
Yeah.
of that sales call.
Right.
It's hey, you might be freaked out by this number, but check this number out. And this number, because, the expense of replacing a high achieving employee in any organization
Mm-hmm.
is up to 200% of their annual salary.
Right.
Now, if that in itself doesn't provide some form of, encouragement and motivation for CEOs to act, I don't know what will. So
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of personal experience. Listen, and actually, I missed out one important element, particularly for HR. I think HR are in a really tricky position because they have to effectively hold their hand up and say, I think we're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many HR managers don't put their hand up, say we're struggling, because they're fearful of the repercussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I truly believe this in my heart, that actually this question determines the career path of that HR manager. What do I mean? So many HR managers have aspirations to be in that C-suite. And I think this decision of whether they put their hand up or not is actually testament, is proof of whether they're going to make that journey or not. Because leaders, real leaders, true leaders, put the global picture first before themselves,
Mm-hmm.
irrespective of what that might mean.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be amazed at the respect that you will get from C-suite by saying, listen, there's a problem, but not only is there a problem, I've found the solution, and do the
Right.
work as to what the solution is. I might be able to help, for example, other consultants, you might be able to help, Catherine, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But provide or present the solution with the problem, and be brave and bold in your choices. You'll be amazed at the impact you can have.
I love that. That's really great advice. Thank you for saying that. That's very important. And I hadn't necessarily thought that far into why HR might not be at the C-suite, but it's that leadership where they really need to speak up. And I would add perhaps that when you say we have a problem, I'm putting my hand up, I found some solutions, that it's not a question. You can't go
Yes.
in there. I think we have a problem. Can we have some
Right.
money? It's
Yes.
This is important. We're killing our employees. We got to
Yes.
fix this. Here's
Yeah.
the solution.
And I think, as an extension of that, something I'm just thinking about is that, again, this HR have so many hats to wear. This is part of why I respect them so much.
Mhm.
But I think, the biggest hat, or the most colorful hat that they can wear for this issue is that they need to think like a marketing expert.
Mhm.
Like how would you like this problem to be presented to you,
Mhm.
and go in with that
Mhm.
language. And so you need to think slightly differently about the language that you're using to get C-suite on board. To your point is brilliant. Don't make it a question, make it a categoric fact. So highlight the pain and then highlight the solution, because it leads to the dream state, which is, look at where our organization could be in my case, 3 months' time. In other
Yeah.
people's case, a year's time, or whatever that looks like. Surely this is worth it. So
Yeah.
it's thinking outside the box about what language you can use to move C-suite forward.
I like that. I like that. Why don't we've got a few minutes left. If others have other questions, by all means, stick them in there and we'll get them answered. But what, for those of us today, right now, feeling a little burned out, can you give us a tip or two just for ourselves as individuals? What can we do today, right now, to take a step towards being a little less burned out?
So I'm doing it right now. So when I had my heart attack, one of the most powerful things that I realized and connected with was the breath.
Mm.
And I think so many people consider the breath or our breathing to be something that can only really be consciously thought about when we jump into yoga or when we jump into meditation or whatever that looks like. Now, as we know, yoga and meditation takes time, it takes commitment and all of that stuff. But the bottom line is that right now you can reset your parasympathetic nervous system by breathing in through your nose and breathing out through your mouth.
Mm.
At the same time, checking that your diaphragm is doing what it should be doing. So, stressed individuals this is exactly what happened to me. Stressed individuals can get to a point where their stomach goes in on an in breath and goes out on an out breath, which is reverse breathing. So, when you're breathing in, your stomach, your diaphragm should expand. So, if you use the box technique, so breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and breathe out for 4. Do that for 60 to 90 seconds. You've just reset your parasympathetic nervous system, which will keep you away from stress, which will keep you away from burnout. Super simple.
Wow. I love it. Thank you for that. I'm sure everybody else was too, like, what happens when I breathe?
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was
My
really
pleasure.
great. And yeah, I'm going to reach out. I want to hear more about your pre-career, as fascinating as all of
Yeah,
this.
no, for sure, for sure.
I'm talking to the Broadway director of Hamilton. That's kind of crazy.
You're not the first person to ask.
It's a cool story. I'm sorry that it went the way it did, but sometimes those things really, sometimes we have to hit kind of a rock bottom of some sort to reset and figure out what we need to do
Absolutely.
differently.
And the last thing I'll say on the Hamilton thing is, number one, I'm so deeply honored to have been a part of that journey. And there are many, many stories, including my first rehearsal, which was in the Richard Rodgers Theatre on Broadway the day after the Tony Awards. I'm playing the piano. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the show's creator, walks across the stage while I'm playing The Room Where It Happens, in the room where it happens, with 2 Tony Awards. And he
Oh,
just puts them on stage and goes boom. And it was I've got so many stories like that yes, we should do
I bet.
that.
Okay,
But
so we're gonna book like 3
yes.
hours. And all right. Well, everyone else, feel free to reach out to Julian as well. You can
Yes,
find
please do.
his LinkedIn profile here on this page. And thank you so much, Julian, again. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.